Phil, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I am doing great. How about you gentlemen this morning?
Doing wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us. So I'll start it off I think you're high on A&M, but I want to start off with Coach Elko and himself. What kind of team you think he's building, a program that he's building, and your thoughts on him overall?
Well, the first thing about Coach Elko is he's 3 for 3 and overachieving my expectations for a year. You go back to Duke, both years he finished higher than I expected, and last year A&M, there they are, the final game of the season, playing to get into the SEC title game. So he's 3 for 3 in that respect. I think he's doing a really good job building this team, and so I'm very high on Coach Elko.
All right, so what are your thoughts on A&M this season? You said they've overachieved, so I guess was the 8-4 overachieving in your eyes, or just the way the season played out, and what do you think for 25?
Getting to 7-1, and then of course being in contention for the SEC championship game. Now, naturally, the way the season finished with the 4 losses in the last 5 games, that hurt the overall record. But I think to get A&M to where they were last year, number 10 in the country at 1 point, 7-1, was a great job. Now, for this year, they are in year 2, which is a big plus for all head coaches. Every coach I talk to, and you get to year 2, I say, where are you at this year? And it's like, well, we're so much better shape. We know the players know the system. And now we got more of our players in there. And you look at the Aggies on the experience chart, they're number 6 on my experience chart this year after being number 56 last year. And I'll go to the offensive line as probably one of the biggest areas of improvement. When I talked to Coach Elko last year and went over the offensive line with him, he said, Phil, I think we're probably middle of the pack in the SEC. This year when I talked to him, he said, we're really talented. We're top tier SEC. We're a Joe Moore Award contender. So I think that sort of speaks volume, not only the offensive line, but the overall team. You look at the running backs, you got Moss, Owens, and Daniels. All 3 of those guys could be feature backs. Love the addition of KC Concepcion and Mario Craver at receiver. Marcel Reed now has experience as a sophomore. And defensively, plenty of talent throughout, like Torian York at linebacker, Cassius Howell at defensive end, Will Lee at corner. It's a very talented team. I've got my number 2 surprise team in the country, and a surprise team is a non-top 10 team. Nobody's going to have them in their top 10 that I think has a shot of making a playoff, and I think one upset probably could possibly put A&M in a playoff. I've got them favored in 9 games, got an underdog in 3. I got an underdog at Notre Dame, at LSU, and at Texas. Pull one upset, and all of a sudden A&M's in the playoff with the 2-loss team.
One of the things you said there was the defense. You like the direction it's going, and I believe you're kind of high on the DBs. So last year they gave up a lot of big plays. What do you think will be different defensively, at least with stopping the pass?
I think it's just the second year in the system. Coach Elko is known for defense. Go back to when he was defense coordinator here in 2021. They allowed 15.9 points per game. He was high on the group of the secondary. He felt that they would maybe not top 3 in the SEC, but above average this year. So he felt better about the secondary. I like the addition of Des Ricks last year coming in at the cornerback spot. Bringing in Julian Humphrey from Georgia. Will Lee, as I mentioned, is a guy with NFL potential. Dalton Brooks. So I just like the overall talent. It's the second year of the defense, and I think the secondary will be improved.
If you had a fear for A&M this year, what would that be? And maybe the overwhelming reason why they could be so good?
If I had a what for A&M?
Well, just first off, the biggest fear. If you're an A&M fan, what's one thing that you'd be fearful for?
Probably the quarterback play. Let's say Marcel Reed gets injured or Marcel Reed doesn't have a great year. I think that would hurt the Aggies. I do think he's bulked up. He's somebody that I believe will have a better year, but that would probably be my biggest concern. In fact, of all the units on the team, I rank them in the front of the magazine. I've got most of them in my top units. Quarterback, I've got number 34 in the country. It's the lowest rated unit.
Talking to Phil Steele here on TexAgs Live. And then a reason for, hey, this is why they could be a surprise sleeper team. Is it the ability to play strong defense the Elko way and run the ball?
Yes, absolutely. And that's that would and if Marcel Reed shows your typical quarterback improvement for the second year. Most quarterbacks' first year's a learning year. Look at somebody like Dominic Raiola at Nebraska last year. Had a up and down year as a true first-time starter at Nebraska. Second year, I expect big things out of him this year. And if Reed lives up to that potential with the supporting talent they have, I mean, love the run game with the offensive line, the running backs, love the defense, and then as mentioned, they've got some upgrades at the receiver position. If they get good quarterback play, I can see them pulling one of those upsets of the three games I mentioned, and all of a sudden get into the playoff. That's why they're my number 2 surprise team.
All right, let's talk about the SEC overall. A lot of new quarterbacks, some established quarterbacks. How do you think the quarterback play this year will affect? I mean, it always affects the standings, but, Texas got a new guy coming in that people are high on. Gunnar Stockton at Georgia. Across the league, new guys. Across all of college football, really.
Yeah, quarterback play is always huge in college football. And I think when you look at the top players, there are some that, come into the season inexperienced, but Gunnar Stockton could have himself a great year. He adds mobility to that quarterback position at Georgia that did well in the big games when called upon last year. And I think he's a good fit for the offense. I think when you go to Alabama, Ty Simpson's probably a better fit for the Alabama offense than Jalen Milroe was last year. And they bring in Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator. And talk about surrounding talent for a guy like Ty Simpson. He's got my number 9 rated offensive line, number 4 set of receivers, and number 7 set of running backs. So he's got plenty of talent around him. And Ty Simpson's not some scrubby walk-on. He was my number 3 rated quarterback coming out of high school. So he's one of the top rated recruits. I think he could have a very big year. John Mateer coming in from Oklahoma. I loved what he did at Washington State. He brings his offensive coordinator with him and Ben Arbuckle. And, last year, Jackson Arnold really struggled in this Oklahoma offense, but there was 2 reasons for that, 2 main reasons. The first one, the offensive line had 0 returning starters last year, and the second was the wide receivers got all banged up. They were down their top 5 receivers at times. I think John Mateer's kind of stepping into from a receiving core that was below average last year to above average this year. Same thing with the offensive line. Bill Beldenbaugh is still the offensive line coach. He's got a talented veteran unit to work with. I think they'll be vastly upgraded on the offensive line, the receivers. They also have better running back, or their deep running back core. They're adding Jade Knott, who was the top running back in the Pac-12 2 years ago, banged up last year. So I think Mateer steps in and does well. And then I just mentioned Jackson Arnold, as opposed to working behind a weak offensive line and a depleted receiving core. He's got my number 12 rated offensive line to work with and my number 6 receiving core. So I think he'll have a good year. You've got Superman and Lenora Sellers. You've got Florida DJ Lagway. Let's hope he's healthy. So I think there's plenty of good quarterbacks in the SEC. It's going to be a really good year.
Well, let's talk about Florida for a moment. There are questions about Lagway's health, but they also have a difficult schedule. I think you have A&M predicted to win that game. Just what kind of season do you expect from the Gators?
I think they'll have a better than expected season. I mean, when you look at their schedule, they'll probably be an underdog in 5, 6, maybe 6 games this year. I would say they'll be an underdog. You take a look at the at Ole Miss, the Georgia game, at Texas A&M, probably the Texas, at Miami, and at LSU. But like when I talked to Coach Napier last year, was going over the schedule with him, I said, Coach, that's a killer schedule. You're probably going to be an underdog in 7 games, and they were. He said, at the end of the year, Phil, I think you'll find the schedule's not as tough as you thought, meaning that Florida is capable of winning some of those games as opposed to, not. And they won 8 games last year. And the thing with Florida, I love their line play. You look at the offensive line and the defensive line. I rate their offensive line number 5 in the country, defensive line number 10. That's a great place to start. They've got Jaden Baugh running back. They've got some dangerous receivers. And if Lagway's healthy and 100%, I mean, this guy was 6-1 as a starter last year and a big difference, then they win some of those games that they could be an underdog in. I see them flirting with another 8-win season this year despite the brutal schedule.
Why are you so high on Penn State? I'm high on them as well, by the way, but just want to get your thoughts on them this year.
You go back and you take a look at the last 2 national champs. Michigan 2 years ago had a lot of players turn down the NFL, opt to return. They were a senior-laden team and a homegrown team. By the way, on philsteele.com, early next week, I'm going to do a blog on homegrown teams that bring in freshmen. They're still on the teams. They're seniors. It's not these transfer portal-laden teams which are bringing in 30, 40 new kids every year. Same thing with Ohio State last year. Yes, they brought in some transfers, but they were a homegrown team. And they had a ton of players turned down the NFL last year. They all opted to return. They wanted the pair of gold pants for beating Michigan. Well, they didn't get the gold pants, but they won a national title. Well, with Penn State this year, they only lose 5 NFL draft picks, and they could have lost probably 12, 14 draft picks last year. A lot of guys opted to return. Danny Dennis Sutton at defensive end, Zane Duran at defensive tackle, probably both first-round draft picks. They've got a veteran quarterback. Of all the returning teams, only a couple have a veteran returning quarterback, and Drew Allar is one of those, and I think he's going to continue to improve. He's got my number 1 rated offensive line in front of him, my number 1 set of running backs, and it's not just Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. They also have Quentin Martin and Corey Smith, 2 very highly touted running backs last year as freshmen. They got their feet wet. They're going to be the running backs of the future. That's a deep running back core. They hit the portal in one area that they needed to, and that's receiver. They brought in Kyron Hudson of USC, Trevor Pena of Syracuse, Devontae Ross of Troy. So I like those pickups there. The defense is dynamic, as it was last year. And then you look at the schedule. They do have to play Ohio State on the road. They'll probably be an underdog in that game, but they've been close to Ohio State each of the last 3 years. Now they've got the veteran team. Ohio State lost 14 players the NFL draft. I think this is the year Penn State breaks through, and James Franklin finally wins the big ones.
Super intrigued by that Texas-Ohio State game, as the whole country is going to be intrigued by it. I'm having a hard time with how I feel about that game. I think Texas is going to end up winning that game, but going on the road to Ohio State against a team that beat you and then ended up winning the national championship, both teams with new quarterbacks. Julian is saying less experienced than obviously Arch Manning, but Arch doesn't have that much experience. When you look at that game, how does that play into the rest of the college football season, and what are your early thoughts?
Well, both teams are going to make the playoff this year. So really, in the overall thing of the, who's going to win the national title, I don't think it plays into it. I look at Ohio State last year. They went into Oregon and lost that game, but then beat Oregon in the playoff when it was more at a neutral site. And, of course, they had the advantage of Oregon having a long layoff, and they had just played the week before. But even if Texas was to lose this game to Ohio State, the next time they play them, it would be at a neutral site. It wouldn't be at Ohio State, and I think that'd be a big advantage. But I think Texas is probably the stronger team. And when I look at Texas, they have my number 1 rated defense. Ohio State lost a ton of talent off the defense. I rate them number 8. They're still very talented. They're not going to have the kind of drop-off Michigan did last year. Remember, Michigan lost like 14, 15 draft picks last year, and all of a sudden they're 6-5 at the end of the year and a 3-touchdown underdog going into Ohio State with the chance of a losing season. Now, Ohio State's not going to have that type of drop-off, just way too much talent. But I do think Texas is the better overall team. Manning is a little bit more of a veteran quarterback than Julian's saying, and I do think they're capable of pulling out that one on the road. I see the Longhorns winning a close one.
A&M hasn't won on the road against the top 25 team in a long time. I think it's 2014 the last time they did that. You mentioned them being underdogs in those 3 big ones. So of those 3, which do you think is the most winnable right now?
I'm going to go with the LSU game on October the 25th. I think that's a matchup where they beat LSU last year. So the confidence level, and that would probably be, of the 3, that's the one I think they have the best shot at. When you look at LSU, their question marks would probably be the offensive line and defensive line, which we lost a lot. If A&M has the line of scrimmage advantage in the game, and they get as mentioned, a lot's depending on what Marcel Reed does this year. But I think that of the 3, that's the one I would give them the best shot at winning.
Okay, which sounds to me you're pretty high on Notre Dame this year, even with some new pieces on the defense. Just break down Notre Dame for us.
Yeah, Notre Dame is loaded, and their big question mark naturally is the quarterback position, but that's with a lot of the top contenders this year. But you look at their offensive line, the overall defense, they are loaded. All of them are my top units. I rated them the number 3 defense in the country coming in, and they've got my number 3 rated offensive line, number 14 set of receivers, number 2 running backs. I mean, the Love-Price combo is outstanding. I love the fact that Notre Dame got the playoff experience last year, getting all the way to the national title game. And that title game probably would have been different had they not lost their top defensive lineman and top offensive lineman to injury prior to the game. So I think they're a loaded team. I do think C.J. Carr is going to do well at the quarterback position, and they get that game at home. We saw them come into College Station, a very tough place to win. It was a great game last year, a lot closer than the final score would indicate. I mean, that thing was anybody's game in the fourth quarter, but I do think Notre Dame having that game at home is a big advantage.
Phil, talk to us about South Carolina. Before I want to talk about your preview magazine, but just talk to us about South Carolina, a team that a lot of folks are high on. They beat A&M's butts last year when Le'Veon got hurt. That defense was fantastic. The defense will look different. Some new pieces around Lenora Sellers. How do you feel about them this year?
Well, I think South Carolina is a really good team. I had South Carolina rated higher than everybody else last year, and I thought they probably deserved to be in the playoff. I was a little disappointed they lost the bowl game to Illinois. They have Lenora Sellers. They have Superman back at quarterback. They're in great shape there. But I guess that my question would be the defensive front seven. And, I'm on the Joe Moore Award Committee, and when we were doing one of our conference calls last year, somebody brought up how somebody once team's offensive line struggled against South Carolina. Another guy brings up everybody's offensive line struggles against South Carolina. It's one of the best defenses out there, and they were. Their defense front seven is absolutely dominant. And while they returned Dylan Stewart this year, the bulk of that defensive front seven's gone. So now defenses can focus on Dylan Stewart, whereas last year he was just one of many outstanding defensive linemen. So I don't think they're going to be as dominant on the defensive front as they were last year. Offensive line, they only have 2 starters back. They do have Superman back. I think they'll be strong, but then you look at their schedule. They have to play LSU on the road, Ole Miss on the road, A&M on the road, and then you have home games against Alabama, Oklahoma, a team I'm very high on, Clemson, and that doesn't even include Virginia Tech in the opener. So I have South Carolina picked a little lower than everybody else just because of the defensive front seven attrition and a very tough schedule. I rate it the 4th toughest schedule in the country.
Phil, talk to us about the 2025 college football preview, where people can get it and what they can expect from it.
Well, it's 360 pages, so it's a heavy book. If you go to the bookstore and get it at Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, you'll feel the weight of it, and then open it up. It's got 2 full pages on all 136 teams. It's like getting 136 media guides rolled into one. Now, it's exclusively, don't waste your gas money looking for it, Barnes & Noble and Books A Million are the only 2 locations to get it, and they usually start selling out in August, so make sure you get there now. It's something you'll use all season long. If you don't get to the bookstore and get it, you can go online to philsteele.com, and at philsteele.com, if you order it there, the hard copy, I'm going to charge you a shipping charge. It costs to ship things, but I give you the digital magazine for free, and the digital magazine's actually updated all the way through the start of September. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, philsteele.com. But once you get one of these in your hands, you'll be getting it every single year, and you're going to use it all football season long.
Phil, this was fantastic, man. Thanks for making time as you always do. Let's catch up during the season.
Hey, sounds good. A lot of fun talking football with you today.
Thank you so much. Phil Steele on the Buppies Catering Hotline.